guys, it's Robbie. Welcome back to English Unplugged. So today I want to talk about a subject that I think has been very common in my classroom and very common among people who are learning English, and that is being exposed to multiple dialects of English. So what that means is maybe someone wants to learn English and they say, okay, I'm going to have like a British tutor, but I want to study American English. Or maybe I'm studying with a South African teacher, but I'm also learning American English. Whatever it may be. But right now we're running into this issue because one, these different countries who claim to be native speaking countries have different ways of using the language, different idioms, dialects, etc. So we need to kind of take a look at that and see how that can affect our learning abilities. So first off, I want to talk about the different countries that have the title of native speakers. So first off, let's talk about it. So we have American English, we have British English, Canadian English, Australian English, Filipino English, we have South African English, and finally Indian English. Now, all these countries claim to be native speaking countries, which is great. I think that's a wonderful thing. So, when you're deciding about who you want to choose as a tutor, you need to make a really rational decision as to why you're choosing that tutor and that dialect. Because one, finding a tutor is kind of a hard thing to do. But on top of that, it's also hard to choose the right dialect. So you need to look at your learning goals and say, okay, maybe I want to learn British English because I can see myself working in the UK. Maybe I have plans to move to the US, so I need to learn US English. Maybe I want to learn English because this teacher's cheap. There's a lot of different reasons that people have. But I think we need to really be conscious about why we're doing it. So before you pick a dialect, make sure you understand why you're doing it and how it's going to affect you. So now let's talk about, choosing the right tutor. So realistically, I think that anyone from these native speaking countries, all of them, have the ability to teach you English. Now, it depends on your comfortability and your skill level if you can handle that dialect. So for instance, maybe the Indian accent might be a little thick. Maybe the Filipino accent might be different for you. Maybe the British accent is just horrible to listen to. But you need to feel comfortable with that dialect and stick with it. So I want to give a brief example of this. So if anyone who's ever watched the cartoon Pokemon, at the beginning of this show, the person has to pick among 3 Pokemon. And they have to use that Pokemon throughout the series. Same thing with us, right? When we're learning languages, we need to kind of pick one and then we can branch out later. So what I mean by that is when we're, practicing, like let's say for instance, American English, we need to stick with American English up until we reach a B2 level. And then we can branch out. Because if we say, okay, I'm going to start out learning in British English and then I'm going to go jump to American English. Well, maybe I'm going to go ahead and jump to South African English. Okay, I'm going to jump over here. Okay, now we're starting to mix a lot of different ideas and philosophies and dialects. And it's hard for us to actually have a firm base for our listening skills and our comprehension skills. So I would say, pick one until you've reached the B2 level. Because even for native speakers, C2 and above, whatever it may be, we don't understand other dialects either. So for instance, an American person talking to a British person, there's going to be a small language barrier because yes, one, the accent and dialect are different. And then, here we have different idioms and phrases. So, it's going to be a challenge for even native speakers when it comes to different things. So I'm not saying to discourage you from one accent or another, because I think, let's be honest. I think all these countries have wonderful attributes and they all have wonderful teachers that produce wonderful results. But you need to stick to one of them and get a very firm base of the language before you start to expose yourself to other dialects. Now, maybe if you have like a child and who's learning English, maybe it might be a little bit better because children can acquire languages much better than adults can. But if you're an adult, you need to kind of stick to one language and work your way through that. So that's kind of like my ideas here. But I also wanted to reinforce my ideas with a article that I read from eric.ed.gov, which said exposure to multiple accents of English language. They did a study out of Hong Kong that said that 50% of students were not sure about being exposed to multiple dialects or accents, while the other 50% were okay with it. So it seems like there's a split decision when it comes to this type of environment. And yeah, I think it's true. I think, we have to pick one or the other. We shouldn't do both at the same time at the very beginning because it can be hard. I've had a lot of students come into my classroom and go, oh man, like I'm used to British English, but now I'm listening to you and it's totally different. Or, oh, I love listening to you. I've listened to British teachers. They're very hard to listen to. I'm really glad to be here. Whatever it may be, you need to kind of pick which pathway you want to choose and follow it, because that's really going to help you grow quicker. Because I see it. A lot of students will sit there and they'll jump around from tutor to tutor and accent to accent or dialect to dialect, whatever it may be. And, they said, oh, I've been studying oral English for 5 years. And they're stuck. They can't comprehend the listening skills very well, or they have a hard time with, talking. So, I realize this is becoming a bigger problem. And I say, hey, maybe we need to address this. So this is my idea. I would say if you're going to start out learning English, or if you're really unsure where you want to go in your English journey, sit down and look at your goals. Look at what you're going to do with the language, what accent sounds good to you, because that's really important. If you want to listen to any sort of English content and it sounds good, it's good, right? But if you listen to someone from another country that maybe is hard to listen to, you're not going to want to learn, and it's going to be a painful process. So, realistically, you need to put in some extra effort into how you're going to learn the language and why you're learning the language and why you're choosing that specific dialect. Because I promise you, it will affect how you learn. Especially when, for me, for example, if I'm learning, for instance, Vietnamese, if I'm learning the northern dialect and I go down to the south and speak northern, yes, they're going to understand me, but I'm going to have some language issues at first until I kind of get used to it. So, you kind of have to pick and choose what's going to be best for you and what your goals are going to be like. So guys, this is just my take on how I feel about accents and dialects. I feel like you guys really need to make an important decision about this, because it will affect you later down the road, and it will affect the development of how fast you learn the language. So I would say find one, stick with it. You find a tutor that you really like. It doesn't matter which country they're from, but if you like the dialect, stick with them, because that's going to help you solidify your language even better. Okay? So guys, thank you so much for watching my video today. I hope you guys found it informative. If you guys like more content like this, more fact-based, more article-based, please let me know. I would love the feedback. I'm going to go ahead and continue down this pathway, because I feel like this type of content is really important for people, especially when there is some facts or articles behind it. So stay tuned for the next episode, and we'll see you guys later.